Hello everyone, good day and mabuhay. This is Burton Joshua Ikdang, a tourism student, your legal aspect chancellor for today. So for today, we're going to discuss all about the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Article 4 and Article 5. So first off, let's start with Article 4. It's all about citizenship. Under Article 4, there are 5 sections, which we will going to discuss later on. So what do we mean about citizenship? Well, citizenship is a term denoting membership of a citizen in a political society, which membership implies reciprocally a duty of allegiance on the part of the member and a duty of protection in the part of the states. So what are those duties and why are we actually tackling about this one? Let's move on and I'll be discussing about all the provision of this laws. Section 1 of the Article 4. The following are citizens of the Philippines. First is those who are citizens of the Philippines at the time of the adoption of this constitution. The second is those whose fathers or mothers are citizens of the Philippines. Third one is those born before January 17, 1973 of Filipino mother who elect Filipino citizen upon reaching the age of majority, and lastly, those who are naturalized in accordance with the law. So there are actually two principle or rules govern in citizens by birth, which is actually the jus sanguinis or the law of blood, which blood relationship is the basis for the acquisition of citizenship under this rule. And the second one is the jus soli or jus loci, which place of birth serve as the basis for acquiring citizenship on the rule or the law of soil. So in a Philippine context or the Philippine nationality law, what we actually have right here or the predominating rule that we have is the jus sanguinis or by blood, which the citizen or the children follow the citizenship of their parents or one of them. So right, for example, my mom and my dad are both Filipino. That's why I am a pure or by blood a natural born citizen. Now, if for some reason that an American man and a Filipino woman bore a child, that child in a Philippine context or Philippine nationality law can adapt jus sanguinis, since we actually have this under the constitution or the predominating rule that we have right now. So basically she can have, or that person or that baby can be a dual citizen depending, but I'll be discussing that further next slide. Now let's move on to naturalization. Naturalization is the act of formally adopting a foreigner into the political body of state and clothing him or her with the rights and privileges of citizenship. It implies the renunciation of a former nationality and the fact of entrance to a similar relation towards a new body politic. So what do we mean by that? It's actually just simple as renunciating. What do we mean about renunciating or renunciation? Renunciation is actually an act wherein you are declaring that you are abandoning the claim or your possession into a certain thing. Like for example, I am renunciating my rights, my privileges as a Filipino, and I am under oath alleging my allegiance to the US state. So that's actually renunciation or renunciating. To further discuss about natural born citizen, let's move on to section 2, which is natural born citizen are those citizens of the Philippines from birth without having to perform any act to acquire or perfect their Philippine citizenship. Those who elect Philippine citizenship in accordance with paragraph 3, section 1 hereof shall be deemed natural born citizen. So, like I said earlier, whenever a mom or a dad or a father or mother is already an actual born Filipino citizen, their daughters and their son will be acquire their citizenship already. No need to have a or to perform any requirements or naturalization. And those mothers who elect Philippine citizenship in 1973. Now, what are the kinds of citizens under Philippine Constitution? There are four. First one is the natural born citizens. The second one is the citizens at the time of the adaptation of the new constitution. The third one is the citizen through election. And the fourth one is the naturalized citizens. Now, I'll be discussing to you about an information. This is just a fun fact, a small information about our constitution. There are actually 5 constitution that was being made in the Philippine government, mainly the Malolos Constitution. The second one is the 1935 Constitution, which is the Commonwealth Constitution. The third one is the 1943 Constitution, which is the when we are colonized by the Japan. The fourth one is the 1973 Constitution, which is the parliamentary state constitution during Marcos regime, and the 1986 Constitution right after the People Power Revolution. So during the history of Philippines, in the 5 constitution made throughout the Philippine history, there are only 3 constitution that actually enacted the citizenship, which is the 1935 Constitution or the Commonwealth Constitution. We were actually under the American, which a child remain an alien until he elects Philippine citizenship after reaching the majority age. What is the majority age? That's actually 18 years old. And the 1973 Constitution, which the mother can elect before January 17, and the 1987 Constitution, which is a Filipina does not lose her citizenship by marriage to an alien. So there are actually 3 ways to become naturalized citizens. First one is the administrative naturalization, which natural-born aliens who live in the Philippines all their lives can actually get a citizenship in the Philippines. This is actually under Republic Act 9139 or the Law of 2000. The second one is the judicial naturalization, which is the Commonwealth Act of 473 or the revised naturalization law, which was enacted in 1973. January 17. And the third one is the Direct Act of Congress, which legislative naturalization applies only for aliens who have made outstanding contribution to the country. What is this outstanding contribution, by the way? These are actually an heroic act or a private government contribution. Those things can actually get or can give you a way to become a naturalized citizens of the Philippines. We will also discuss about derivative naturalization, which is actually it's obtaining one citizenship from or through another person. The examples for this one is the wife of naturalized husband, alien wife of a natural born citizen, or a minor children of naturalized parents. So, for example, a wife of naturalized husband, they can actually obtain citizenship as well in the Philippines. An alien wife of a natural born citizen. So, For example, a Filipino man married a American girl or a Canadian girl, and this girl chooses to become a citizen of the country, they can actually obtain citizenship as well. Or a minor children of a naturalized parent, so they already are going to be obtaining the citizenship since their parents already have been naturalized in the Philippines. But in lieu with that, naturalized citizens can't enjoy the following. There are actually one, which they cannot actually enjoy getting dual citizenship, or they can no longer actually have dual citizenship from Philippines to another country. Like, for example, citizenship from America or citizenship from Philippines. They can no longer have both of them. But they can still actually have dual allegiance. We will going to discuss about that later on. Then the second one is run in any political position. I actually pin out there Grace po, which she actually have an issue back then in 2016 when she decided to run on the highest position of the land, which is the presidency, wherein she was questioned about her citizenship, since she lived in America for how many decades or years. Then she moved back here and was been appointed as the MTRCB chairman and was also voted being a senator. That issue actually exploded when she runs in the politics in presidency, wherein they question the credibility of her citizenship, since Grace Poe as well is an adopted child of Fernando Poe Jr. Let's move on. Section 3. Philippines citizenship may be lost or reacquired in the manner provided by law. So there are actually two key factors on loss of citizenship, which is the involuntary and voluntary loss of citizenship. Let's go with voluntary first, or the expatriation. These are the naturalization in another country, renunciation of citizenship, or subscribing to an oath of allegiance. So whenever you are actually subscribe or take an oath or renunciate your citizenship from another country to another country. So like, for example, I am a Filipino and I wanted to be an American citizen, not a dual citizen, but I am subscribing already to an oath of allegiance to them. You are already in pursuant with the naturalization processes of that given or of that country. So you will no longer be eligible of the privileges and the rights of being a Filipino people. Now, let's move on to the involuntary, which it is the cancellation of certificate of naturalization by the court, or it is actually example of a deserter of the Philippine Armed Forces. So, whenever a foreigner or an alien moves in the Philippines and they become a spy, or the papers, the documentation are not really credible enough, the court, the Congress, the Senate can question its credibility of being a naturalized citizens in the country, or whether that is a spy, like for example, and as a threat to the Philippine Armed Forces, then they will lose their citizenship and will be deported. So now let's move on to reacquisition of lost Philippine citizenship. There are actually three key factors. One is the naturalization, second is the direct act of Congress, and the third one is the repatriation or the recovery of original citizenship. I actually heard about the repatriation in the current news that we actually have during the war in Ukraine and Russia. Philippine or the overseas Filipino workers were actually obliged to be repatriated because of the war that they have in Western Europe. So whenever they already acquired citizenship in Ukraine or in Russia per se, they can gain back or reacquire back their citizen or their lost citizenship because of repatriation. This is in lieu with the government dictation regarding on to recovery of the original citizenship and protection as well of the Filipino people around the globe. So now let's move on to section 4, which citizens of the Philippines who marry aliens shall retain their citizenship unless they are deemed under the law to have renounced it. So in any case, like actually I mentioned it already earlier, that if ever that a Filipino woman marries a American guy or American man, they can still retain their citizenship unless they renounce it in the other countries wherein they already pledge allegiance. Like for example, a Filipino woman married an American man, and they can still actually have dual citizenship, which they can apply Filipino and American citizenship at the same time. But whenever that Filipino woman acquire allegiance already or renounce its citizenship of being a Filipino, then she can no longer, or that will be a different story, or that will be a loss of citizenship with regards to section 4. Now let's move on to the last section of Article 4, which is section 5. Dual allegiance of citizenship is inimical to the national interests and shall be dealt with by law. So, what is the difference between dual citizenship and dual allegiance? By the way, dual citizenship is a citizen of two countries at the same time, while dual allegiance is a person simultaneously owes loyalty to two or more states. Note that what Section 5 prohibits is not dual citizenship, because a Filipino people or person can actually obtain a dual citizenship from this land, the Philippines, to another state or abroad, or country abroad. But dual allegiance is a big no-no. Dual citizenship arises because our laws cannot control the laws of other countries on citizenship. That's the reason why we have dual citizenship that we cannot prohibit. But we can prohibit dual allegiance because you are already subscribing to or subscribing to an oath of allegiance to many countries. And our on the Philippine context and the Philippine nationality law, we do not actually have that. Being a Filipino citizen, there are actually duties and obligation. Among others, the more important duties and obligation of every citizen in a democratic society. First is to be loyal to the Republic of the Philippines. Second is to defend the state. Third is to contribute to the development and welfare of the state. Fourth one is to uphold the Constitution and obey the laws. The fifth is to cooperate with duty constituted authorities. Sixth is to exercise rights with responsibility regard for the rights of others. Seventh is to engage in gainful work. And eighth one is to register and vote. Register and vote, the right of suffrage. That will be the Article 5, and we will going to discuss that on the next slide. Article 5, or suffrage, the right to suffrage. Suffrage may be exercised by all citizens of the Philippines, not otherwise disqualified by law, who are at least 18 years of age, and who shall have resided in the Philippines for at least 1 year, and in the place wherein they propose to vote for at least 6 months immediately preceding to or the election. No literary property or other substantial requirements shall be imposed on the exercise of suffrage. What is suffrage, by the way? That is actually just the right to vote. There are actually 5 scopes of suffrage, which are, the first one is election. It is actually a process of vote. It's actually coming this May 9, 2022, of the presidential, vice presidential, and senatorial, as well as the local election in the Philippines. The plebiscite, which is it decides to accept or reject certain changes in the constitution. The third one is the referendum, which a law can be accepted or repeated based on the popular vote of the people. The plebiscite and referendum are actually discussed in the legislative branch of the government, which is the Congress and the Senate. The fourth one is the initiative, which is the people directly propose and enact laws. It's also actually processed in Congress and as well as in judiciary branch. And the last one is in recall, which is, it is actually a method by which a public officer may be removed from office during his tenure or before the expiration of term. This actually happened in EDSA Revolution 2, wherein people decided to remove President Erap or Ernesto Estrada to its office and replace it with GMA or Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. You know what? Every Filipino people has the right to vote. Every citizen of this great country has the freedom to choose whoever that person would like them to lead. But fun fact about this one, before the 1935 Constitution, Filipino women actually aren't allowed to vote. It only changed in 1937. There's a change of the Constitution, wherein it is the Act number 34, which is the right to suffrage. And this happened, this change of history happened and continuously happened up until this moment. So right now, women, men, LGBT, everyone has the right to vote. Whether it's old, young, at least 18 years old, has the right to vote. So before I end this discussion, I would like to leave a quote from George Carlin that if you don't vote, you lose the right to complain. Your vote is your voice, and in this coming election, choose wisely. Thank you so much for listening. This has been Burton Joshua Ikdam, your legal aspect chancellor. Bye.